following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. We're coming to you on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, the X Zone broadcast on Channel 32 on Simul TV. Well, here we are at the end of the week, and boy, did this week ever go fast, and so did the month, considering it is now officially September the 1st. The kids go back to school in 4 days, and I've got parents throughout the United States and Canada and Great Britain clapping their hands saying, yay, the kids are going back to school. Woohoo! Yep, I remember those days. Don't miss them at all. Wow, great show for you tonight for everyone. My first guest is Mark Anthony. He's JD's psychic explorer. He used to be the psychic lawyer. I guess he still is. And we're going to be talking to him about many items, including the 3 awards that he's won recently for his book. And welcome back, old friend. Good seeing you.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate being here. I always love working with you on the X Zone.
Yeah. So tell us about these 3 awards you've got, buddy.
Well, my latest book is The Afterlife Frequency. And I'm very, very honored because it's won 3 awards. It won the Cover Coalition of Visionary Resources Award for Best Book in Reincarnation, Death, and Grieving. It won the Best Holistic Life Magazine's Award for Most Inspirational Book of the Year. And it won the OMI Award, put out by Om Times and iSpirit Media, as Metaphysical Book of the Year. Plus, it was designated by prettyprogressive.com as one of the top books about faith and God. And it was considered for a Pulitzer. Didn't make the Pulitzer, but it was in the running. So I've been very honored, very humbled by how well received my book, The Afterlife Frequency, has been. So thank you for asking, Rob.
Well, my pleasure. You know, a book is only as good as the author. And when it comes to authors and people, my friend, you're right up there at the very top.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You know, in the Afterlife Frequency, you write about how it was growing up psychic. For those of you out there in radio and TV land who have not heard of, you know, Mark Anthony because you live in a cage or a tent somewhere, and you've finally got your hands on a TV or you're sitting in a pub somewhere watching this, tell our listeners and viewers a bit about yourself and your journey into psychic explorership.
Well, I was born into a family of mediums. Both my parents had these abilities, and it runs for generations on both sides of the family. And the thing is, I'm the first one that's really gone public with it. My dad was a U.S. Navy SEAL and an aerospace engineer. So he was about as no-nonsense a guy as you're going to get. But he influenced me very much to always find a reason, a solution, an explanation for something. So right. I grew up with a very science-oriented father, and my mother was a commercial illustrator and an artist. And it's a long story, and I write about all of this in all 3 of my books. I give different aspects of my family, but my dad met my mom after he got out of the Navy at a dance, and it was a USO dance, and here he is, this full of himself sailor, and he meets this foxy looking dame. And what it was, my mom worked in fashion at a high-end retailer, but she got all the designer clothes at wholesale. So she was all decked out. And anyway, they explained to me that they had a connection that went beyond on just physical attraction. And eventually, after a couple of dates, and my mother was a nice Italian Catholic girl, so she was very, very proper. And my dad was very respectful of her because he was a true gentleman. Mm-hmm. And she said, before we go any further, I see spirits. To which all of a sudden my dad said, as only a sailor could, a number of colorful metaphors followed by, I do too. And so they realized why they were so connected. And then when I was about 3.5 years old, I started seeing spirits. So I grew up in an environment that was very positive and very friendly about it. And it was great, Rob, because I was able to talk to my parents about these things. And they have both transitioned to the other side. And I miss their physical presence, but for the benefit of everybody listening, please understand that people we love do not disintegrate into nothingness. It's just that when our soul leaves the material world, and in my book, The Afterlife Frequency, I explain our soul as the electromagnetic soul. I explain it on the basis of quantum physics. So who we love doesn't disintegrate. They're just on a different frequency, the afterlife frequency, and they are capable of communicating with us.
How is it that you're able to do this communication and not everybody else can?
Everybody can, Rob, to varying degrees. And the
Mhm.
reason is we all have the same physiology. This isn't hocus pocus or magic. And there's two psychic receptor areas in our body. The center of our forehead, if you go about 4 inches, 4 to 5 inches into the brain, is the pineal gland. And the center of the forehead, for your listeners who have done yoga or are aware of the term of chakras, that's what's known as the third eye chakra. And then in the solar plexus, which is just below the rib cage, is the other main psychic receptor area known as the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is the most complex bundle of nerves outside of the cerebral cortex. And a lot of scientists refer to it as the second brain. And people say, what do you mean humans have two brains? Well, an octopus has 9 brains. It's got one
Mhm.
in its head, and each one of its arms has its separate brain. So other species do. And the pineal gland in our brain, and this is the answer to your question, regulates our brainwave frequencies, our ability to perceive light, our circadian rhythms. So there's 5 different brainwave frequencies. Gamma, ultra high frequency, that's when you're like brains running at full throttle. Then there's beta, the activities of daily living state that we're in now. Then you start to relax, you go into alpha. And then from alpha, you slip into theta. This is when you go into deep sleep. And then there's delta, very little brainwave activity. But Rob, it is the alpha theta border between around 8 hertz where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. And for some reason, people like me are able to switch from the beta state to alpha theta within
Wow.
seconds, whereas with most people, they have to be asleep. And that's why spirits come to people in their dreams. And you know the difference between a regular dream, which has all that crazy, disassociative, bizarre imagery, versus a visitation, where you have a coherent interaction with the deceased loved one. So all this is based on human physiology, and just simply some people seem to be wired for it better
Mhm.
than others.
So let me see if I can put it into an analogy that our listeners can understand. You're like a multi-band radio where some people can only get certain AM stations, FM stations, shortwave stations, where you can get the entire frequency spectrum on all the bands.
You hit the nail right on the head.
Where do we go after we leave this meat suit?
What happens is think of your brain,
Mhm.
okay, as a computer hard drive.
Right.
It did not create the program on it, which is I call the EMS, the electromagnetic soul. Okay, because our brain has an electrical field. And what's interesting, Rob, the brain only accounts for 2% of the body's weight, yet it uses over 20% of the body's electricity. And the most complicated electrical system in the body. And the reason I call it the EMS is because everything's made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are composed of quantum, ergo the term quantum physics, which is pure electromagnetic energy. And so the electromagnetic soul, the EMS, is what we really are: pure consciousness. That's our spirit.
Right.
which is eternal electromagnetic energy. So back to the brain as a hard drive, that hard drive crashes. In other words, we physically die, and the EMS, analogize it, think of it like a drop of water. It then leaves the body and plunges into this eternal sea of consciousness, which I refer to as the collective consciousness. Edgar Cayce, the great psychic back in the 1940s, called it the universal mind. Progressive Christians call it the Christ consciousness. Regular Christianity, Islam, Judaism refer to it as heaven. The Buddhists refer to it as the stream of consciousness. So this is where we go. In other words, we leave our world, which is AM radio, and we pop over to the other side, which is FM radio.
Gosh, I just had something I was going to ask you and it kind of slipped my mind. Is the collective consciousness the same as the Akashic records, or are they two separate things? One is where the residence is, and the other is the great library.
The collective consciousness, as I understand it, is the energy, the interconnectedness of all the spirits. It's what some people refer to, we're all cells in the body of God. So, and once again, what does quantum physics teach us is that everything at the most basic level is electromagnetic energy. Whether it's a rock laying on the ground, the air we're breathing, the rays of light we're seeing, our bodies, the rings of Saturn, everything is electromagnetic energy. Ergo, it is all energetically interconnected. And so the Akashic records is an information database, if you were. So it's not that the Akashic records are separate from the collective consciousness.
Right.
They appear to be a component of it.
Got it. Mark, always great talking to you. Again, congratulations on your 3 awards. Well deserved. And you and I have to take a short break. Exonation, Mark Anthony is our special guest. What's the best website to reach you, Mark?
That'd be just like my book, Afterlife Frequency. Like my book, The Afterlife Frequency, afterlifefrequency.com.
You notice how I gave you the opportunity of getting a few more plugs in there, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you, Rob.
All right, stay there, my friend. We'll be right back. Exonation, Mark Anthony is our special guest. A great guy. And I'm proud to say that I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a number of years and consider him a friend. Mark, stand by. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to dive into the mysteries of the unknown? Tune into the electrifying X-Zone radio TV show hosted by the one and only Rob McConnell.
I'm Rob McConnell, and get ready for a mind-bending journey through the unexplained phenomenon that surrounds us all. From UFO encounters to cryptids, ghosts, and everything in between, we've got it covered here in the X-Zone.
Rob McConnell, the seasoned investigator and renowned radio personality, brings you the most compelling interviews with top experts, authors, and experiencers from around the world. Each episode is an unforgettable exploration into the depths of the extraordinary.
That's right, Exo Nation. Join me every week as we open the door to the supernatural and explore the strange and amazing stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew.
And it's not just radio anymore. With our groundbreaking TV show, you can now witness the sessions unfold right before your eyes. From chilling reenactments to captivating visuals, prepare yourself for a multimedia experience like never before.
With a legacy spanning over 2 decades, the X-Zone radio and TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, is your ultimate source for mind-blowing entertainment and thought-provoking discussions. Join our growing community of truth seekers as we continue to unlock the world's mysteries.
So, why wait? Step into the X-Zone and embark on a journey that will challenge your beliefs, ignite your curiosity, and keep you on the edge of your seat.
Remember, X-Zone Nation, the truth is out there, and it's waiting for you right here on the X-Zone radio and TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't miss a minute of the action.
Tune in now on your favorite radio station or visit xzoneradiotv.com to join the adventure. the X Zone radio TV show with Rob McConnell, where reality meets the unknown.
The X Zone radio TV show, unraveling the secrets of the universe, one episode at a time. For more information, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com.
And welcome back, one and all. Mark Anthony, the JD Psychic Explorer, is our special guest this hour. Why the change from psychic lawyer to JD Psychic Explorer?
What happened is when I first went public with this, I was at a conference in New York City, and a couple of reporters heard that I was both a psychic medium and a lawyer, so they started referring to me as the psychic lawyer, and it stuck. And, my publicist at the time said, "Oh, this is great. Mark Anthony is a psychic lawyer." But then I started appearing on shows like this and other shows where I began to talk not just about psychic mediumship, but also supernatural, paranormal phenomenon, ancient mysteries, various other aspects. And then the media started calling me the psychic explorer. And so my manager, Rocky, and I and my agent, we sat down and we put it all together. So the JD is my law degree, which is Juris Doctor, Mark Anthony, JD, Psychic Explorer. Because when we start going, Mark Anthony, a psychic lawyer, also known as a psychic, it's like, too long. So we put it all together. So, so I hold the equivalent of a doctorate degree, which is my Juris Doctor, because I am an attorney and I'm licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. And I've tried over 100 jury trials, represented thousands of people, done thousands of hearings. But I've also been studying supernatural phenomena at locations all over the world. And I also am a paranormal investigator and a near-death experience researcher. So to get all that into one brand,
JD Psychic Explorer.
Psychic Explorer, yeah. So because a lot of people ask me about that, and I'm glad that you did. By the way, when we're on the commercial, for everybody that's listening, like Rob said, we've known each other for years, and I think the first time I was on the X Zone had to be like 12, 13 years ago, maybe even further back. And when I was watching like all the graphics with the aliens and the UFOs, it's like, man, I was getting so enthralled in that. I love seeing how the X Zone has just really, really exploded into an A-list show. I'm really proud of you, Rob.
Thank you, my friend. But it's because of people like you and the audience, whether it's the readers of the X Chronicles or the listeners or the viewers, who are looking for the information that guests like you are able to share with them. And I'm sure many people who listen to our shows together say, "Oh my God, it's just not me. I'm not alone."
Yeah. And see, we used to, when I say we, it means people like Rob and I that delve into the paranormal, the supernatural. We got to realize that the paranormal is really normal and the supernatural is very natural. It's just that there's more to reality than what our five physical senses can perceive. And so a show like the X Zone used to be very fringe, and now we're very mainstream. And people are always ask me about the spirit communication, which is what I do. I facilitate connections between people here and their loved ones in spirit. But sometimes this gets really, really, well, it's always really fascinating. And if I may, I'd like to bring this up. Sure. With all the aliens that you have on the graphics on the commercial breaks, I've done a number of readings for people who claim to be abductees, and I've done a reading for two of the most high profile ones. Calvin Parker being one of them.
Sure, Pat, in Mississippi, great guy.
Yeah. Calvin is awesome, and he's also the most credible credible
Yeah.
abductee, because this happened back in the 70s. He was fishing with a friend, and this object came out of the sky, and they were scared, and he's he goes, look, we're just two rednecks from Pascagoula, Mississippi, and
That's
we're
right.
fishing.
Yeah.
They said they tried to run, but they couldn't because this light was on them, and these robotic entities hovered out of the craft, took them on board, did all these things to him. And the fascinating thing is that county in Mississippi, the sheriff's department that day was overwhelmed by calls from people reporting a flying saucer, a UFO.
Yeah.
Since that time, in the almost 50 years since then, Calvin has been subjected to questioning by the FBI, hypnosis, sodium pentothal, lie detector, polygraph tests, has passed every single one of them as 100% accurate. And I've done readings for a number of other people who've been abducted. And what's really interesting, Rob, is when the spirits of their relatives come through, they always talk through me to the recipient about the abduction. Now, some of the people that I've done readings for, I didn't know were abductees until it came out during the reading. And one thing that has popped up in all of these connections is that the abductees were selected because of the way their body metabolizes protein.
Really?
It's something, yeah. And I thought that was really fascinating. And it came out in Calvin, and it came out in everybody. And Nancy Tremaine, she's the one of the other real high profiles, and I've done it for about half a dozen or more other people. And so I was talking once, and you probably know him. You may have interviewed him. His name is Chris DiPerno. And Chris DiPerno is with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And what his job is to debrief abductees. And I mentioned that. I go, yeah, in all the readings, the spirits say that these people were selected because of the way they metabolize protein. He goes, what did you say? And I said, well, something about protein. He goes, oh my God, Mark. He said, in every one of the abductees, after the experience, they crave protein, like off the charts. He said one guy ripped open a package of hot dogs and ate them, and he said they are just protein. And he goes, and it never seems to change. And so I called Calvin, and I go, Calvin, he goes, oh my God, I crave protein all the time. And so we were talking about that. And of course, you can draw your own conclusions. Why are they doing that? But there are people that they target on purpose. And it appears that they're looking for particular physiological characteristics. And one time I did a reading, Rob, for this mother and her son. And during the reading, I think it was her husband, who had been the young man's father, came through, and all of a sudden he started talking about the UFO. And I said, he said that you saw a UFO, but you were close, but not what they were looking for. And they started like flipping out. She goes, oh my God. She said, my son and I, they were somewhere, and they saw this large metallic object, and it shined a light on them for a second, and then it sped away.
Wow.
So it was like scanning them. It was like, oh, they're close, but not really. Look, I know what this sounds like, but the thing is, we're now at a time where now the U.S. government is putting a UFO website up. And just a few weeks ago, there were F-18 pilots. Okay, these guys are Top Gun guys.
Mm-hmm.
These are about the most credible and serious guys you're ever going to meet in the world. And they're testifying about these objects that they're seeing. Now we call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And he said they're doing things that F-18s can't.
But is it possible, Mark? I watched the congressional hearings.
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed with David Grush, because I think that if you're going to sit in front of Congress and you want this to happen, you've got all this information that just tell everybody, instead of saying, well, I can't talk about it, it has to be done in SCIF.
Yeah.
To me, that was like, why? Okay. If you want this information, now the other two, the one with the Tic Tac and the other pilot, I'll give them credibility. But when it came to Grush, The old spidey senses kind of went, eh. Whether he was a plant from the government, whether he was just fed up, had an axe to bear with the government, I don't know. But that didn't sit right with me. And I've talked to other people within the UFO community. They say the same thing. But the other two pilots, you can't dispute their reputation, their records, or their sightings.
Well, I've dealt with so many witnesses, confidential informants, government agents, FBI, everything over the years. And people on that level are always hiding something. So the question is, what is it and why?
But isn't it possible, or isn't it feasible, I should say, that after all the years after Roswell, with everybody gaining momentum, using more and more technology, looking for the truth, that by now some evidence, physical evidence, that the public could not dispute would be found and presented?
It's really frustrating, isn't it?
Sure
You
is.
know, and I love that I'm on the X zone when we're talking about something that could be an episode of the X Files, because that was always the thing, the physical evidence.
All
And,
right,
you know,
I just have to ask you, who are you, Scully or Mulder? Let's get our roles straight. Or Deep Throaters, whatever.
I'm definitely Mulder. I'm definitely
Okay.
Mulder.
All right. I'll be
But you know,
Scully.
my dad, my dad was, like I said, a Navy SEAL, but
Yeah.
he was also in aerospace. And he told me that when he was a young engineer, and this is years before I was born, so my parents had me later on,
Mhm.
he said he was at a laboratory in California and they were growing silicon chips. And he said, silicon chips, where do we get the idea to do this? And he said the vice president that he was with of the technology firm, he said, well, since you have a top secret security clearance, I can tell you this. So something happened in New Mexico a couple years ago, and the government brought in all the high-tech firms, Texas Instrument, they brought in Morton Thiokol, was Martin Marietta at the time, not, Lockheed, they brought them all
Sure.
in. And he said, and we found something, and he said, and it gave us ideas. And so my father was firmly convinced that not only was Roswell real, but things were recovered that gave us ideas. And a good friend of mine is Colonel Dr. John Alexander, who used to be the head of the U.S. Army's UFO project back in the 1970s. And he said, these things are real. He says, what they are, we're not exactly sure. And if there is an answer, it's as complicated as cancer. And so I've had discussions with some pretty high level people about this, and none of them have said, oh, no, it's a hoax. Oh, no. The question is, and it's the same question you're asking, Rob, why aren't they releasing this to us? What, they're afraid of panic? I mean, how could the world be in a worse condition than it is now anyway?
Exactly, Mark. Exactly. And if the premise that I've heard so many times, and I'm sure you have, my friend, that they are here to help us, why don't they? Why don't they just land? If they're monitoring our communications and everything else, they know the state of the world. Why not just land and say, you know what, guys, we're here to help, but in order for us to help you, you have to help yourself.
Well, maybe they have, and we don't realize it, or maybe they're
okay.
Think about it. Let's look at the technological disparity between them and us is obviously immense. So think about when the Europeans, let's say when the Spanish came to Central America, and the technological disparity. The Spanish had gunpowder, they had steel, they had for that time, and they encountered the native populations. And what did they do? Okay, they infected them with diseases, they plundered, they took over. So, maybe we shouldn't be in such a rush. But I would also think that if they wanted to conquer us, they would have by now, and they certainly could.
Yeah.
The other thing is they might be studying us and realizing what an incredibly violent and dangerous species we
that
are.
we pose the threat to them instead of us.
Yeah. They give us whatever technology they have. We're going to weaponize it and
Most
use it
probably
against
reverse
them.
engineer it, and away we go. Listen, one quick question before we go for the break. You were saying about the protein of the abductees. Do the ETs extract the protein from the abductees?
From the abductees that I've
Yes.
done readings for and talked to, they were all probed, and it appears that samples were taken from them. Much the same way when you see, like, if you're watching biologists, they'll shoot a dart at a bear, sedate it, and then go take samples from it.
That's where I was going with this. That's where I was going with this.
Harvesting something from us
because I'm bringing it to the cattle mutilation.
Yeah.
You know, hell, I like a good steak. I get a lot of protein from steaks. Maybe, I don't know, but when you said protein, it kind of went, wait a second here.
Well, and that also leads to, and I know we're going to the break, so we'll leave the listeners with this. What are they doing with that protein, and are they using it on some type of genetic project? So
we'll
that's
come back after. Love working with you, Mark. Stand by, buddy. Give our listeners the name of your book and your website.
My book is, and the website is, The Afterlife Frequency. And just go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com. The scientific proof of spiritual contact and how that awareness will change your life.
A great book by a great guy, Mark Anthony. We'll both return on the other side of this commercial break, unless we're, zipped up for our protein. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
And welcome back, everyone. The website that Mark was talking about, the U.S. official website for UFOs, UAPs, is actually available online and on our website at xzbn.net. We're going to have the link. So all you need to do is go there. Not now. We're not releasing it until after Mark leaves us because we don't want you to take off. As always, great talking to you, Mark. Let's talk about the genetic possibilities. Because we were talking about the protein, and I kind of tried to stretch it to the cattle mutilation, because I figured, well, if they're doing this, if they're abducting humans, which obviously they are, because there are certainly enough people like Calvin, who I've had the pleasure of talking to a number of times here on the show.
Yeah.
Why do they have to keep on? Why do they need to keep on abducting people? Because it makes no sense that if they're this highly advanced, that they wouldn't have to keep abducting to find out what they're looking for.
Well, first, I would assume we understand what they're looking for. And secondly, based on my discussions with Calvin and Nancy Tremaine
Right.
and the others, they are abducted on more than one occasion. And not that I'm comparing people to sharks, but look when they tag a great white shark
Mhm.
and we're able to track it, and then other animals that are tagged and we're able to track,
Right.
the biologists will, on more than one occasion, go back and abduct them
Sure.
and
Okay.
conduct more experiments. So, we think that, we're this superior being and we're going around doing this to bison and bears and
Mhm.
sharks and all these other type of animals here on this world. And then it appears that if you're open to this, and certainly we're speaking in the theoretical, but they're doing it to us for whatever reason, and maybe they're conducting experiments. And I've heard all types of theories that what they may be doing is taking genetic material to create a hybridization between humans and whatever they are, and that I've heard a number of people saying that aliens are here, but they're been assimilated into our society. And certainly maybe by taking the genetic material, that's something that they're doing, is they're creating a human alien hybrid. Now, I know how crazy that sounds, but then again, 20 years ago, if you said the
Mhm.
United States government was going to post a website about UFOs and basically admit that they're real, you would have thought that was insane too.
Well, it all depends on who the president is, I guess.
I guess. But if you look, I mean, Biden's been open about it. Trump was open about
Mhm.
it. Obama was open about it. I mean, as open as presidents ever seem to get about it. So it certainly is fascinating.
It
It's
is, but I,
certainly.
I often wonder how much of it is a deflection from actually what experimental aircraft is out there, what the other uh, countries that are not as friendly to the United States as Canada and Great Britain are.
Yeah.
What could this be a method of protecting national security secrets?
Well, it could be, and at the risk of sounding facetious, people say, "Well,
Mhm.
it's the Russians." Like, look, they can't even beat Ukraine.
That's
Okay,
right.
and what we're seeing from the debacle that Putin has caused by the unnecessary invasion of Ukraine.
That was awful.
Apparently Russian military technology isn't what they hyped it up to be. Now, maybe the Chinese is, because they've certainly been very devoted to stealing other countries' technology and
Sure.
developing and refining their own.
Mhm.
But when you hear F-18 pilots say, we don't have anything that can do this, and the United States is supposed to have the most sophisticated air force in the world. If the Russians had that type of sophisticated aircraft, they'd be using it on the Ukrainians. And if
Exactly.
the Chinese had that, then why haven't they used it to go ahead and snag Taiwan? I mean, and I'm not certainly not encouraging any more wars. Uh, so I don't, based on what I'm hearing,
Mhm.
it seems doubtful that it is Russian technology. Could it be Chinese? Possibly.
But let's take another look at another aspect, and this is a hypothesis and a what if factor. According to common knowledge, Mach 5 is the fastest right now of military aircraft. And yet we know for a fact, that the Mantra or the Manta is Mach 10. It's a hypersonic. It's one of the latest auroras that are out there. So let's say the United States government wants to test this one of these experimental aircraft before it goes into service on the United States Navy to see detection, maneuverability, and so on and so forth. I don't know. With once again, Mark, without seeing evidence that these craft from other dimensions, other universes, wherever they're from, actually do exist, it's hard for a guy like me to say, I believe. I want to believe, Mark. Mark, you know me. I want to believe.
Yeah.
That's why I do this show. Believe me, my wife thinks I'm nuts, but I still do it. I want to believe. And I believe the truth is out there. And it's with people like you and everyone else out there who is serious about this that we'll find out. But once again, my question is, why don't we see evidence that we can all say, you know what, we're not all nuts. It's not all hype. It's not a government conspiracy. It's not a cover-up. There's the facts. Welcome to planet Earth. Hold hands, get a bonfire, and sing Kumbaya.
Rob, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, when I'm talking about the people that I've done the readings for that claim, and I always say claim to be abductees because, look, I'm a medium. I communicate with spirits, and a lot of people think that that's a bunch of nonsense and it's not possible.
Oh, it
but
is.
But I'm an evidential medium, and the things that I present, I can't possibly know. And people over you're reading their mind. Well, the vast majority of readings I do are over the phone, and I don't think I can read people's minds over the phone. So there's people that would believe that that's impossible, but now we're looking at UFOs. And the other thing is, we're also trying to figure out their motives based on our motivations and mindset.
Right.
Maybe time is very different from them. Maybe they're looking at things, because there's people that think that, the pyramids were built by aliens and all this. And I have to keep an open mind on things. Maybe their motivations aren't, maybe they don't care to interact with us. Maybe they're simply studying us, or maybe they're going to make a move at some point, but it's not within our time frame. Or maybe they're waiting for us to go ahead and nuke each other, and then they'll take over after that. Or maybe it's something we can't even comprehend.
Or maybe the answer has been in front of us all this time. It's called the Bible. We look at the Bible. We look at other religious philosophical books. I believe the hints are there. But for some reason, we don't want to understand them because, once again, where's the beef? Where's the proof?
Yeah, exactly. Because I would love it if the government would come clean, because it gets rather tedious, all this hush hush. And what are they afraid? We're going to cause a worldwide panic? I think, if anything, it would be a wake-up call to humanity that we need to stop squabbling among each other and start working together.
Yeah.
But the only time people tend to band together, people of diverse ethnicity and diverse interests, is when an external threat is posed. I mean, look at World War II. You had colonial empire, Great Britain, communist Russia, Soviet Union, and capitalist United States, three very different, not always getting along, all of a sudden, getting along in the face of the threat posed by the Nazis and the fascists. And I think that if humanity felt that these aliens pose some type of threat, it would be a unifying factor. But then maybe the government knows that they're not a threat. There's got to be some type of motivation why this isn't released. I don't see what the downside would be. To me, I think it would be an upside.
Well, maybe that's because you're a peace-loving person, Mark. But let's look at it from the other side of the coin, where the governments of the world, who may have true knowledge of their existence, are figuring, well, if we get them on our side, that gives us, leverage when it comes to military might and a great control factor. And maybe the ETs are saying, homies, don't play that game.
That's an interesting analogy, because I know I'm going to sound like I'm going on a tangent, but okay, so when the Pilgrims came to Massachusetts, the Native American tribes there, we all hear about, the first Thanksgiving when the friendly Squanto went and taught the Pilgrims how to plant the Three Sisters corn, beans, and squash, and how to hunt and fish, and all this. Well, what was really going on there was the chief of the Wampanoag knew that the Pilgrims had cannons and muskets, and he wanted their help against the Narragansetts. So that was exactly it. You have these aliens that landed in Massachusetts who had superior military technology, and one of the nations in North America wanted that technology, which they got, to use against their others. So what you're saying is not without precedent. It's definitely, there is a unfortunate logic to it.
Mark, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about Demon Night Vision Goggles and the story behind it. Mark Anthony, thanks very much for being on the show, my friend. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. Congratulations again on your books, awards, and Exonation. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the Exxon from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
NASA has confirmed that they have evidence of life beyond Earth.
This discovery is confirmed.
Well, let's see, we've had visitors again. And probably worth mentioning.
I filmed 16 minutes on March 5th, 1994, 16 minutes of broad daylight UFO activity.
The other side, the spirit realm, is a parallel dimension which runs, which coexists with ours. And what spirits are doing is they're sending waves of frequency from that dimension to ours.
The government instituted the truth embargo. The government poured disinformation and misinformation into this field, encouraging hoaxes and any other foolishness. It created a truth vacuum that naturally was going to be filled with theories and assertions and other stuff.
The oil oligarchs and the banks and the people who are making decisions that are leading us down the wrong path.
They've undermined the research, intimidated and threatened witnesses. The government is responsible for the fact that the status of this issue is not resolved.
I'm Rob McConnell, host and executive producer of the X-Zone radio show. Now we are set to bring the amazing world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology to broadcast TV and online video with the development of X-Zone TV. X-Zone TV will now bring our loyal listeners and new viewers face-to-face with the most controversial and well-known personalities in the field of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. From scientists to theorists, astronauts to adventurers, celebrities, pundits, advocates, and naysayers, they'll all join our rapid-fire TV broadcast, interactive discussion, and debate. Interest in the paranormal and parapsychology has never been more intense, and it continues to grow. The truth is out there, so take a deep breath and join us as we step into the light. For more information about X-Zone TV, please contact me, Rob McConnell, directly at these coordinates, Rob McConnell at xzonetv.com. And we're both back. Mark Anthony is our special guest. Mark, give your book a plug and your website.
My website, just like my book, is the Afterlife Frequency. Just go to the website afterlifefrequency.com, and I invite you to sign up for my newsletter. You can find out about scheduling a reading with me, and that's at afterlifefrequency.com. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that.
Anytime, my friend. By the way, the clip, the promo that we played, that actually was shot, I believe, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 years ago.
I had a different office then. I have a bigger office now.
Yeah. Wow. Good for you, buddy. First of all, we've got about 9 minutes left. My producer just told me. Thank you very much for staying this little bit of extra time. I know how valuable your time is, Mark. For all the people who have listened to you over the years here on the X Zone and the other many media that you've been on who haven't had the opportunity of speaking to you like I have, thank you from them. Thank you for being Mark Anthony, and thank you for the great work that you've done.
Thank you.
Tell me about the Demon Night Vision Goggle. And I must tell you quickly, when my producer typed it out, he typed Demon Night Vision Google story.
Well, it's a really fascinating story, and I'm still determining whether it's an urban legend or factual. There's a gentleman by the name of Cliff High, and he's a military man, and he said that his father was an officer in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And for a brief period during the Vietnam War, the U.S. Army issued a new form of night vision goggles that were red night vision goggles. They're usually green, and the human eye sees more shades of green than any other color, and it's believed because of evolution. Think about hunter-gatherers. You got to, be able to negotiate your way through a jungle without getting eaten by a tiger or, finding what food. And there's more definition to green, but with red night vision goggles, red is very soothing on the optic nerve. And also when you switch from day vision to night vision and you're using red, your eye doesn't have to transition. So there's no shift. Also, red increases mental acuity and increases, or rather decreases reaction time. So it kind of gives a jolt to your brain. So at first, these night vision goggles were well received by the troops, but then things started happening, and the troops that were given them started fighting. The troops that were wearing them were obsessed with treetops. And then there came the pivotal incident where a squadron of helicopters was flying over an area. It was a routine patrol, and they weren't in combat. And the officers and the pilots were under strict orders not to wear these red night vision goggles. But the gunners could, and suddenly this one young gunner, and Cliff High's father was in that helicopter, according to the story, and opened fire. And he wasn't shooting at something on the ground. He was shooting at something on their level, and he was screaming, "They're coming for me! They're coming for me!" He goes, "There's demons and devils." And High's father, I'm just going to call him, Officer High, he figured the kid was tweaking on some kind of drugs. I mean, it was Vietnam. And he said, "Take those goggles off." And he put them on, and he said, "Oh, dear God." And then the reports started coming in. When he put them on, he saw what looked like gargoyles, these demonic-looking creatures that were, humanoid shaped with wings and horns flying. And apparently, when you put the goggles on, these creatures realized you could see them, and they were coming at the helicopter, which is why this guy started shooting at them. And all this happened within the span of 60 days, and then the U.S. Army confiscated all the goggles. And there's been a lot of speculation as what exactly were they seeing? Were they seeing into a different dimension? Were they simply seeing into the infrared spectrum, which is beyond the human eye's ability to see? And if so, were they picking up on demons, devils, or was it something else? And so it certainly lends to a lot of speculation. But to follow up on our last conversation, before the break, the military replaced those with green night vision goggles. And since that time, troops using the green night vision goggles, their reports of UFO sightings have gone off the charts. Because apparently, the green night vision goggles enable you to see in a different frequency beyond the range of what the human eye is capable of. In fact, there's even tour groups in Sedona, Arizona, that take people out at night and equip them with green night vision goggles for the express purpose of trying to see UFOs. So these type of visual technology that enhances what we can see beyond the visible light range,
right,
certainly has yielded some pretty interesting results.
Wow, Mark, we'll have to have you back on so we can continue this fascinating, discussion. And don't combat ships and aircraft switch from normal lighting to red during an alert?
They do. They do. There's been a red alert, and there's a lot of nobody. Please do not do this unless it's through the supervision of your doctor. But red light therapy has been used to treat types of blindness and vision impairment because it reduces inflammation in the optic nerve. But it must, and I stress, must be done by a doctor who is trained in this, so that you have proper supervision. Because red light does stimulate your brain, and it also has a very healing effect on certain types of eye problems caused by diabetes and other type of degradation of the optic nerve.
As always, time goes by so fast, my friend. Great seeing you, Mark.
Likewise.
And continued success. I have to ask you this, in all honesty. How can people get a copy of your book, and what's your website?
AfterlifeFrequency.com. You can find out about my books, signing up for my newsletter, signing up for reading with me. I've got a lot of fascinating events coming up. If you sign up for my newsletter, you can find out about not only my readings, but my Light Circle events coming up in October. And looks like I'm going to be back on tour of Texas in October.
Wow.
And also, I have a weekly show every Thursday, The Psychic in the Doc, where my co-host is a behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Basili, and people can call in. I do a reading, and Dr. Pat helps you interpret it. So,
super.
It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to coming back to X Zone. And everybody, let me tell you, this is the place. All topics are on the table here on the X Zone.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Mark. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for your friendship.
Thank you. Likewise. Good night,
Take
everyone.
care, my friend. All right. That was my friend, the one and only Mark Anthony. In fact, Mark is going to be a guest, I believe, with Larry Lawson in the near future. So all those of you who watch and listen to the shows on the X Zone TV channel, as well as the X Zone Broadcast Network, will be able to watch and listen to Mark when he is on Paranormal Stakeout with Larry Lawson. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news, as once again we continue here in the X Zone, where we are searching for answers, demanding the truth. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.